Hello and welcome to Link Ahead, the City of Dublin podcast. And we have a big one today, Bruce, for a couple of reasons. We have two fantastic guests with us, and this is our 50th episode of Link Ahead. Did you have any idea?
That this is 50.
50 episodes, and we wouldn't know this without our producer, Scott Light, who keeps track of all these things, and he tells us that's kind of rare.
Holy smokes.
Many podcasts don't make it through 5 episodes, and we're up to 50.
That is crazy.
Yeah,
Does that mean we're syndicated now, Scott?
I guess.
No, but I do want to give a shout out to Lindsay because this was your brainchild, and I remember you talked about it in staff meetings, and then you asked me to do it, and I was like, yes, and it was a new lease on life. So thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you for being a fantastic co-host. It's been a lot of fun, and we've had a lot of great guests, and we can't think of anything better to celebrate our 50th episode than a naturalization ceremony right here in Dublin, where nearly 150 people became U.S. citizens. This is truly goosebump stuff, Bruce.
It is pretty cool, and we're honored to have a gentleman here who helped lead the ceremony earlier this month, the Honorable Federal Judge Ed Sargus of the Southern District of Ohio, who also served as Chief Judge from 15 to 19. Your Honor, it is an honor to welcome you to Link Ahead.
Well, thank you. I live in Dublin, so this is a great pleasure for me as well.
We're so happy to have you here, and we are also honored to welcome a woman who's a naturalized U.S. citizen. Vita Lambillotte calls Dublin home, and her career is based here as well. She's a senior director stylist at Penzone Grand Salon, my salon, by the way, of course. Vita, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So, Judge, our listeners have probably seen a quick 30 seconds of a naturalization ceremony on the news or social media before, but why don't you give us a little bit more detail? What is a ceremony like? How does it unfold?
They're always exciting because people like Vita are about to finish a very long process to citizenship that can range anywhere from 2 to 10 years or even more. So it's a family day. And the day we did in Dublin, we had many of the city officials. We had the mayor, the city manager, council members, the chief of police. We had a color guard. We had the mayor as the guest speaker. So it made an exciting day even more exciting.
And just to be clear, Judge Sargus, you didn't preside over Vita's ceremony, but the two of you have known each other for years.
We've been debating for the last few years which judge it was.
Well, it was a while ago. Vita, when did you become a naturalized citizen?
So I became United States citizen August 8, 2006. It kind of took like 10 years for me to go through the process. I moved to this country in December 1996.
Wow. So what was it like that day after you put in that 10 years of hard work? What was it like the day of the ceremony?
Actually, I told Ed as the moment I walked inside, it was special. It was very emotional. And I felt like, oh my gosh, I was so welcome to the country. For me, it was oh, I can actually breathe again and live life now. Oh. It was really, really emotional for me.
Congratulations. Describe the study that's involved. There's a civics test, studying American history, our form of government, all of that.
Yes. So to apply for citizenship, you'll have to take the test. And after that, you receive all the paperwork and you actually, it's a day they signed up for you to go to the ceremony. I did take the test and I passed it.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I had to learn everything about the United States citizen and about the country, which is, I was like, okay, this is really new for me. But I was actually I was happy to study that, and I learned a lot just taking the test.
Bruce, do you think we could pass that test?
I would love. I hear about this. We took civics in 8th grade.
It's been a while.
And it's been a while for me. So
yeah.
Well, I will tell you, we did a naturalization ceremony in my hometown of St. Clairsville and invited a bunch of college or high school students. And the juvenile judge passed out what he found on the internet was the test.
Oh, my.
The year before. And actually, most of the students passed it. I'm glad
That's
to say.
good to hear.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I did win an Americanism test when I was in high school. So when I was...
Wait, is that the award you have up on your office?
Yeah, I have it framed in my office.
Right.
But I won a trip to D.C. And so when I was 16, I would remember all of that stuff, but not so much right now, probably.
Wow, that's cool. So let's talk about the ceremony earlier in May here in Dublin. There were 147 petitioners from 51 countries, and they ranged in age from 19 to 76. Is that pretty representative of other ceremonies?
No, this was a big one. We usually do 50 at a time in the courthouse. That's about the capacity of most federal courtrooms.
Wow.
But we do a handful of them, what I would call large ceremonies. This is the largest. We do one with the city of Columbus each year. So we do a few like that. It's always fun when we do the big ones. We have more than one judge. Almost all the judges in Columbus, there are 4 active judges, 1 senior. The 4 actives were all there, plus a magistrate judge. So this was judge heavy, I would call it.
Right. We were saying all 4 there. And that's not normal?
No.
No. How did those 147 people become part of this particular ceremony? How are they selected?
You're basically in the queue.
Okay.
So people, and this is the last step. So you can't register to vote before this. You're not a citizen before this. So people are anxious.
So I don't know if you can answer this, but do you have a favorite part of the ceremony? And this can really go out to both of you.
So my favorite part of the ceremony was when you'll have to swear and say, I am here to become United States citizen. That was my favorite part. And not just for me, for everybody that was there in the room.
And I know they say the Pledge of Allegiance. Does that happen at every ceremony?
It does.
That's really moving to hear all the new citizens saying that.
And the oath that Vita mentioned is really moving. I usually give it when I do one of these alone. It's interesting because it's the original oath from 1789.
Really?
With one change. First of all, if you heard the oath, you're abjuring allegiance to any potentate, sovereign, or person to whom you've been a subject. This is factual that Abraham Lincoln presided at one of these during the Civil War, and they added one phrase. You swear allegiance and to protect the United States against all enemies, and he added the phrase foreign and domestic to cover the Civil War, and we still use that.
Oh, wow. Great. Earlier, Vita was talking about how emotional it was for you. Now, you've been through quite a few of these, Your Honor, but I assume it's still emotional for you as well.
Very much. I have my grandfather's immigration papers on my desk. He came here from what's now Lebanon. Back then, it was the Ottoman Empire. Both of my grandparents on my father's side immigrated. On my mother's side, her father immigrated, and her mother was the daughter of immigrants. So, and that's pretty typical. You find people who are Americans and don't think of themselves as immigrants actually are children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren of immigrants.
Absolutely.
Wow. Now, I'm always amazed at the diversity of the people being naturalized and what a gift it is to all of us to bring in and or expand our traditions, cultures, languages to Dublin, to Ohio, and beyond. Now, speaking of Dublin, let's talk about our great city because that's kind of why we're here. So, Vita, why did you choose Dublin as a home for both you, your life, and your career?
So when I moved here, actually, my sister moved here. She came as a refugee. So I moved to Dublin because of my sister. I did not speak the language. I needed somebody that I can be with and kind of walk me through life and answering my questions. It was really hard for me when I moved here because I did not speak the language.
Sure.
So I chose Dublin because of my sister.
Vita, tell us a little bit more about your background, where you came from, when you came, things like that.
So I grew up in Albania. That's the country where I was born. So we actually were a communist country for 55 years, and we have no freedom of speech, and government controls everything, controls your life. So I grew up really poor. My mom and my dad had 8 children. So we actually, the pay there, it's very low no matter what job you have. We actually, we did not know that there was another world that existed. So we're just in a box. So I think everything started changing there in 1996, I believe. And that's when people realized, we want freedom. We wanted this country to change. And there was a revolution, protesting, all that. So that's when people broke the embassies. They took ships and they left the country, and people went to jail. People started killing each other. So I wanted to leave because I didn't want to be there. So my brothers actually left and went to Italy. One of my brothers he got stabbed and almost died. My sister came here as a refugee, and I wanted to come. I was very close to my sister. I wanted to come here. So it took very, very long time for me to get a visa. So when I moved here, I I just felt like I lost everything, lost my mom, lost my family. And I was like, I don't think I can stay here. So then I couldn't go back. I couldn't fly back. The planes weren't going back home. The country was in a war. So I had to stay. And that's how my journey started, to stay in this country.
Wow. And you speak how many languages, you were telling us?
So I speak my language, Albanian. I learned Macedonian from my parents. Both of my parents are Macedonian. And I learned English here. I understand just a little bit of the Italian. All my family speaks Italian. Like I said, one of my sisters, she learned Italian from watching soap operas.
Vita has another talent. She served as an interpreter for a number of court proceedings.
I did. One of my jobs when I moved here, I was interpreter just because of Macedonian community here. So I worked for the courthouse and hospitals.
Wow. And Judge Sargus, you were appointed by President Clinton in 96, then confirmed by the U.S. Senate, and then you and your wife, Jenny, also a judge, by the way. Wow. I want to have dinner at your house. I bet that's...
You're more than welcome.
There got to be some good conversations.
She's a great cook.
Oh, good to know. So you had to decide where to live in Central Ohio, and you picked Dublin, too. Tell us why.
The long version first. So I started working in Columbus 31 years ago. At that time, my wife was a common pleas judge in Belmont County, St. Clairsville. And I lived in St. Clairsville most of my life, a wonderful little town. The only reason we moved was the distance to where I work. So 10 years ago, Jenny semi-retired. Both of our sons are here. And for me, being close to 60, driving 120 miles one way to work didn't seem the smartest thing I had chosen. So we looked around, and I will tell you, I was involved with city government quite a bit in St. Clairsville. We had a mayor for 24 years who, wonderful, he became head of the Ohio Municipal League, all the mayors in Ohio, and he used to tell me if he could pick a city besides St. Clairsville where he'd like to be mayor, it would be Dublin, Ohio.
Oh, great.
So when we were looking to move, this was high on our list. We found a house we really liked. We've been here for 10 years. I will always miss St. Clairsville. It's a wonderful little town. But I love Dublin, too.
Diversity is certainly a giant point of pride in our city. Our Dublin City Schools, for example, is one of the most diverse in the entire state. We have students from more than 70 countries speaking more than 100 languages. Dublin is truly a global city of choice. I'm just going to throw that out there and see how you can respond to that.
I actually like diversity inspires me. Like I work with people day after day. And I think sharing my story, listening to the others, I feel that's what makes difference for us to like do the best and succeed in life. So I actually love that we have that here. And I feel really welcome. And I love being here in this country.
I think diversity really adds to the flavor of this town. I think it's amazing the process in America that I don't think we emphasize enough is to how quickly people adjust to America because America is welcoming. I knew my grandmother well. She was a very talented woman, ran a store for years as a single. Her husband died very young. I never met my grandfather. She ended up putting all the kids through college in the middle of the Depression. And all of them became, in a good way, Americanized. I mean, I still eat Lebanese food thanks to them. but this country weaves people in very quickly. A generation or two later, you're as American as any other American. And there are very few countries around the world that are like that. They tend to be more ethnically homogenous. And when you move 2 or 3 generations later, you're still not woven in. And I think Americans should take pride. It's good for people coming here. It's just as good for the people who are here. On a light note, we get much better food as a result.
That's so true.
But we see the world. And I love looking out in the audience when we're doing a naturalization and think, wow, these are all part of America now. These people have joined us and we're better for it.
So, Vita, you have a daughter at OSU. Can you tell me what she's studying?
Yeah, so my daughter, she went to Dublin City Schools. She went to Scioto. And today she's 23 years old. Wow. Her name is Ashley. We have same last name. So she was actually a tennis player for high school, and she played tennis for Otterbein the first year of Otterbein. Wow. She was top 100 Midwest tennis player. And so she transferred herself to Ohio State because she thought, I want to learn and I want to like have the best professors. So she just finished her 5th year and she applied for grad school and she got accepted nursing and science.
Awesome.
Yeah, so she just hard worker. She works full time as a server at Roosters, and she goes to school full time.
Oh my goodness!
That's awesome.
You must be such a great role model for her.
Thank you.
So proud.
I think like it's like with the generation is like choices that younger generation makes, and also the parenting is part of that too.
Absolutely. Judge Sargus, away from federal court downtown, we know you're involved in several nonprofits. You and your wife are longtime adjunct professors at the Moritz College of Law at OSU. And we also know you're about to publish a second book. So what is that book about?
Well, you're a little on the optimistic side. I've written the second book. Now I'm hoping to find an agent and a publisher.
Okay.
They're both Civil War related books. I mentioned St. Clairsville is a wonderful little town. It's very old. It's just not far from the Ohio River, and the state, if you remember, settled from east to west.
Right.
So I lived next door for many years because my wife and I moved back to the house I grew up in next to a very old cemetery. And it's a judge story because the judges had a retreat in Wheeling, which is right by St. Clairsville, and they all said, we've listened to you brag about this town for years. You're going to give us a tour. The night before, my wife said, I'm looking at the schedule here. You've got some time you need to fill in. You know that. So I ran over to this little cemetery and was very familiar with it, but hadn't researched a lot of the characters. And I bumped into a Civil War figure who I think of as like the most interesting person I've ever stumbled into. No one's written a book about him. And there are pieces of his life that they're kind of hard to discern. So he wouldn't make a good biography in a historical sense. The first book I wrote was pure history.
Gotcha.
So I've been learning for the last 15 years, hopefully in a way that will be publishable, how to write a novel.
Ooh.
All right.
So it's about him, and he had a very eventful life. He had a very strong-willed father. The two of them have an interesting, agreeable, disagreeable relationship as the Civil War goes through all of its horrible course, and each one of them played a very distinctive but different role.
Now, who is playing this when you sell the movie rights? Have you thought of the character who's playing this?
He died at 32, so I think I've aged out.
Judge, we talked about, we addressed the second book. What is the first book about?
First book is about the creation of West Virginia. It sounds a bit dry, but when Virginia voted to secede and join the Confederacy, the people on the other side of the Alleghenies, known as West Virginia, said, we're not going. They were not in favor of slavery. They were not in favor of the Confederacy. And the legal story of how they get there is interesting because the Constitution would have required the government of Virginia to approve a split of the state. But the people in West Virginia said, your government's illegal. You're in rebellion against the Constitution. So their new government, they proclaimed to be two governments. The government of Virginia, because there was no other government, and the government of West Virginia. And then on behalf of Virginia, that government consented, even though it was all in West Virginia, to the state being split. So it gets to Congress and to Abraham Lincoln, and he struggled with it. He made each one of his cabinet members write an exposition on whether this was constitutional. He had 6 cabinet members. 3 said yes, 3 said no.
Oh, no.
He waited until the absolute last day to sign the bill. He signed it. And then as soon as the Civil War ends, Virginia sues West Virginia in the Supreme Court. The court had 8 members at the time, and they tied. And the case sat there for 6 years. In the end, after the composition of the court had changed with a new president and new appointments, it was declared constitutional 7-2. Interesting. It's the most interesting way a state was ever created.
Oh, my goodness. So, well, that sounds fascinating. One of my best friends is from West Virginia. So now I guess I know what I'm getting him for his birthday. That sounds like a great gift. So it's not very often we have a federal judge here on Link Ahead. Tell us just a little bit about what's a day in the life, for you.
I think a lot of people could say this, but I think I have the best job in America.
Wow.
In the federal court system, I'm at the trial level. So we're the court that does jury trials. We're the only court that does sentencings. We can issue or deny injunctions. Everybody above us is reviewing somebody else's work. So this is, if we were looking at any type of organization, this is the line function. So every day is different. One day it's a sentencing, the next day it's a jury trial. I have wonderful staff. We are protected by the U.S. Marshal Service. They are wonderful. We have a wonderful probation office. They do enormously good work. We have a really talented clerk of court's office. Everybody in the building is happy to be there. It's the happiest workplace I've ever been in. And we usually are struggling with big issues. Sometimes jury trials tend to stick. If I'm making a pure legal decision, people can disagree and go to a court of appeals, and we always joke they need work too. So,
well, last question on this topic: do you like or despise watching like court dramas? I know I watched the show Your Honor. That was when you're just shaking your head over there.
My wife and I, we agree on everything except TV shows. But the one type of show both of us agree on, we don't watch lawyer shows. Yeah.
Well, and Vita, how about you? What's a day in a life for you? You're an artist. Some might say a therapist, as a hairstylist. Tell us about your job.
So I love what I do. I always been people person. So when every day, when the guests come to the salon, I actually am a good listener.
We didn't mention you actually cut the judge's hair here.
and my wife's too.
And your wife's
yes.
Wonderful.
I actually love them. They're like the most humble people I ever met. It's so simple, and just the way he talks to you, he talks to me. I know so much about him.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I always think of the person who does my hair as a therapist.
Well, I was going to say, you probably hear as much as he does.
Yes, maybe more. Yeah.
I do hear. Yeah. So I pay attention who the person is and what they're talking about, just like the judge said, I know so much about him because he opens up to me like all my clients do. So my job is I'm blessed to have a job like that where people can open up to me and listen, and I can listen to them and we all share.
Wow. So when is your book coming out?
A collab, right?
I was going to say.
I actually am going to write a book.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, again, we are so grateful for your service and passion to Ohio and our city. And we end every episode of Link Ahead with a little rapid fire fun. So let's just jump right in. Okay. Vita, you are a senior stylist director at Penzone, as we mentioned. Now, whom do you trust with your hair? Because it looks pretty fabulous.
It looks amazing.
So I trust any professional that works at Charles Penzone. We're all great at what we do, and I would just be happy anybody can do my hair.
Okay, what style or trend is coming for men?
All wave and natural.
Can you make sure that the mullet never comes back?
Oh.
Actually, I'm a hairdresser. I love everything about
She loves it. She loves the mullets.
I love everything. When it comes to hair, you do whatever you want.
Awesome.
Okay, well, for women, what's the trend?
So a lot of curtain bangs, a lot of layering, a lot of texture, kind of blowout look.
Okay.
It's very in right now, color-wise, whatever you're in the mood for it. I want to be dark. I want to be blonde. Like cowboy copper is very in right now.
Ooh, there you go.
Wow. All right. Your Honor, a little birdie told us you're a fan of Bridge Park. What is your favorite restaurant there?
Well, you're putting me on the spot. There's so many good ones. Cameron Mitchell's are great. I like Fado quite a bit, actually. Yeah. Across the river, we like Tucci's, and Dublin Village Tavern is always great. And J. Lou's. So there's so many restaurants here. It's hard to single it down.
If the Dublin Village Tavern isn't mentioned in every episode of Link, we're disappointed.
I don't know why we haven't gotten them to sponsor us yet, because every single time. But we had Ian Montgomery on Link Ahead last year because he was our honorary chair for the Dublin Irish Festival. He was a fantastic guest. Vita, same for you. I saw you nodding that you like Bridge Park as well. Do you have any favorites?
I actually love Bridge Park. I live right there.
Wonderful.
My favorite is the Avenue. I love it a lot. Every place they're great.
Judge, if you had a time machine and you could live in any period of time, what would that be?
I've done so much work lately on the Civil War. It would be somewhere late 1850s through 1865.
Judge, we hear you also tear up Dublin's paved paths with daily runs.
Ooh.
So take us on your favorite route.
I like Glacier Ridge. Okay. I also just like, Dublin is... Everywhere you look, there's bike paths. So I normally just walk out the front door. It's a lot more time efficient.
Well, this one's for both of you. The best part about being an American is, let's start with Vita.
All the opportunities, everything that you want to do with life. I love that about being here.
Judge?
The oath new citizens swear to says that they will defend and support the Constitution of the United States. And as a federal judge, I have to say, I think that's what makes us Americans. The Bill of Rights incorporates what is special about this country. So that's where I start.
Well, that is a great way to end this episode, our 50th of Link Ahead. So Judge Ed Sargus and Vita, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
And to our listeners, thank you as well for taking time to connect with your city. Tune in next time as we continue to explore the many personalities and experiences that make Dublin a thriving place to live, work, and grow.